All right, let's dive into one of the weirdest, but also one of the most important stories in the entire book of Genesis. We're talking about a story of intense family rivalry, desperate prayers, and a mysterious plant that literally changes the course of history.
It all starts with a really bizarre question. I mean, think about it. You've got two sisters, Leah and Rachel, and they're rivals, married to the very same man, Jacob. The whole story gets kicked into high gear when a little kid finds a strange plant out in a field. And that one discovery, it sets off a chain reaction that nobody could have seen coming.
So what is this plant? Well, in Hebrew, it's called duraim, which we translate as mandrakes. And you have to understand, in the ancient world, this thing had a reputation. It was seen as a kind of love potion, or, and this is the crucial part for our story, a really powerful fertility aid. For one of these sisters, that was absolutely everything.
Okay, so let's get right into the moment this wild transaction actually happens. It's just such a raw, emotional scene, and it cracks open years and years of pent-up pain between these two sisters. The scene kicks off when Leah's son Reuben comes home with these mandrakes he found. The second Rachel sees them, remember she's the one who's been tragically unable to have children, she goes right to Leah and asks for them. You can just hear the desperation in her voice.
And whoa, Leah's response is just an explosion of emotion. See, for her, this is not about a plant anymore, not even close. This is years of feeling like she's second best, like she's the unloved wife. She basically accuses Rachel of already stealing her husband's heart, and now she wants the one thing that might give Leah a little bit of leverage.
So Rachel makes a counteroffer. She's so desperate for those mandrakes and their supposed magic that she offers Leah the one thing she knows her sister wants more than anything, a night with their husband, Jacob. This trade just lays it all out on the table, showing you exactly what each woman is prioritizing in this incredibly tense moment.
And this decision, wow, it has massive, eternal consequences. The great medieval commentator Rashi points out something chilling here. He says that because Rachel treated a night with her husband as just a bargaining chip, she ultimately lost the privilege of being buried next to him. A single trade, made in a moment of desperation, led to an eternal separation.
So the deal is struck. Rachel gets her plants, and Leah gets her night with Jacob. And you know what? For Leah, the payoff is huge, and it happens almost immediately.
The text tells us that God heeded Leah. He listened to her, and Rashi explains why. This wasn't just Leah being selfish. She genuinely wanted to help build Jacob's family, to fulfill the destiny of creating the 12 tribes of Israel. She saw this as her sacred duty.
And get this, she goes on to have 2 more sons. She names the first one Issachar, which means there is a reward, directly calling out the fact that she hired her husband. Then, with her 6th son, Zebulun, you can hear her hopes shifting. She says, "This time my husband will exalt me, because now she's given him more sons than anyone. Surely now she'll be his number one."
In the meantime, those mandrakes, they don't seem to be working. So while Leah's family is growing, Rachel's situation is just getting more and more desperate. In her eyes, it's a complete and utter shame.
For Rachel, not having children was a public humiliation, but Rashi adds this other layer of absolute terror to her situation. Rachel was afraid that Jacob would divorce her because she was barren, and if that happened, she could be forced to marry Jacob's dangerous, estranged brother Esau. So for her, the stakes could not have been higher.
But then, the whole story pivots. The text says God remembered Rachel. And Rashi explains that God's memory isn't triggered by some folk magic plant. No. Instead, God remembers 2 key things. Rachel's incredible act of kindness years ago when she saved her sister Leah from public humiliation, and he remembers her deep, abiding fear of being cast off to Esau.
So it's because of her own merit and her own suffering, not because of the mandrakes, that her prayers are finally answered. God opens her womb and she conceives.
And when her son is born, you can just feel the relief in her words. She says, "God has taken away my disgrace." She names him Joseph, which means to add. And right away, she's already praying, hoping God will add another son for her.
Now, the birth of this one baby, Joseph, isn't just a personal victory for Rachel. It is the absolute turning point for the entire family, for their whole story. Everything changes now.
And Rashi reveals something incredible here. There's this deeper, almost mystical reason for the timing of Joseph's birth. You see, Joseph was destined to be the spiritual counterweight, the adversary, to Jacob's rival, Esau.
A prophecy helps explain this idea.
The house of Jacob is described as fire, but Rashi explains that a fire, on its own, can only burn what it touches. To project power, to have influence at a distance, it needs a flame. Joseph was that flame, born to consume the stubble of the house of Esau.
All of a sudden, with his divinely appointed protector now born, Jacob feels this massive shift in power. He trusts that he's finally shielded, that the cosmic balance has tipped in his favor. He is finally ready to go home and face his past.
And this is what brings us to the story's big resolution. The birth of this one son untangles years of fear and delay, and it sets a whole new chapter into motion.
The text is so clear about this. It says, after Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, it's immediate. He goes right to his scheming father-in-law Laban and says, we're leaving. Laban, of course, knows that Jacob is the secret to all his wealth, and he does not want him to go. And there's one last amazing detail in Rachel's prayer. When she named Joseph, meaning add, and asked for another son, she wasn't just being hopeful. Rashi explains she had a prophetic insight. She knew Jacob was destined to have 12 sons total, and she was praying that the final one would also be hers.
And really, that's the ultimate takeaway here. A story that starts with a bitter, personal fight between two sisters over a handful of plants. It spirals into the birth of a key figure who empowers the patriarch of a nation to finally go home and claim his destiny. It's just incredible.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? These private, desperate choices made by one family just ripple outward, and they become the public destiny of an entire nation. It kind of leaves you wondering about the long journey of our own decisions and what unseen consequences might be waiting for us just down the line.